Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast by Closers.io where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Karen Vadney, and in each episode, we uncover the stories behind successful startups, the challenges faced along the way, and the strategies driving their future expansion. Today, we're thrilled to have Casey O'Rourke, the founder of KCLO Communications, joining us. Casey has over 25 years of experience in marketing and public relations, and her virtual agency helps businesses craft compelling brand narratives and achieve measurable growth. Casey, welcome to Founders Future.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we are so excited to have you. Casey, for our listeners, I like to take us back to the beginning. So, what specific problem or gap inspired you to start KCLO Communications?
Yeah, so I started my career early on in PR and through my career became a marketing generalist. And one thing I was realizing was that B2B professional services and financial services oftentimes 50 million revenue and below couldn't really justify an executive marketing presence despite the fact that they needed one. So I started KCLO Communications to provide that executive level feedback in terms of marketing, strategy, branding, PR to fill a gap for companies that still needed that strategy, but it didn't make sense for them to hire full time.
Okay, incredible. And for our listeners, can you walk us through how KCLO's services have evolved? So, how have your offerings like fractional CMO services or PR strategies and your target audience changed over time?
Yeah, I really started out the business feeling industry agnostic, and I still largely am that way. Just naturally and organically, my clients have become that B2B and financial services piece that I thought I might serve as I started this company. My evolution in terms of my packaging, really, I started out with a very traditional agency setup where I was on retainer based on the number of hours I estimated that I would work, very traditional. And that has evolved into more of a packaging and outcomes based approach for my clients, where I'm really focusing on the deliverables and having customized packages that they can plug into wherever they are in their business life cycle.
Okay, awesome. Let's go into the nuts and bolts of what you're doing here. So, can you walk us through how KCLO Communications generates revenue today, especially for future clients of yours that are listening? What is your core service offering, and how do you structure out the pricing for services like PR strategy or even throughout that fractional
Sure.
CMO
And it's
leadership?
Sure. It's funny because it's the product and the packaging is always evolving, and I'm in the process of evolving that now. So you guys are getting the first look at some new packaging. But my core offering is a fractional CMO service, fully engaged, where I can come in about 40 hours a month and really be knee deep in your business. We're going to audit, we're going to plan, we're going to strategize, and we're going to come up with a roadmap to meet your business's goals and objectives. In terms of packaging, I start at very first with an audit. So companies who feel like they have a problem but may not know what that problem is can call me and we'll do a marketing audit. We'll just identify where your gaps are, where your problems are, what you're doing well, what's maybe not going so well. And so you can just have a better idea of what that looks like. Then the second package I offer would be a strategic intensive. That's about 30 days of work where I come in and again do an audit, sit down with the executive team and key stakeholders for about half of a day, and then come up with a marketing plan. So you're getting the audit plus a strategy that your team can then execute. And then that third offering is the more intensive CMO kind of nuts and bolts, start to finish, all the things package. And then following that, I also have a PR package that we call the credibility builder. That's PR focused only, really focusing on paid, earned, owned, and shared comms, which is great for a lot of companies. And how I initially get a lot of clients, they think they come in, they think they need the PR, and then they realize they need everything else. And then for clients who have worked with me either in the intensive package or the fractional CMO package, I have an advisory package for ongoing kind of lighter hours just to make sure the plans that we've laid out are successful for them.
Awesome. Okay, so we've got a few different options
Few different options.
for
Yeah. Kind of
clients. And for our listeners, can you explain, is this one-to-one work? Is it group work that you're doing? Is it different with each offer?
It's different with each offer, and it's really based on what the client need is. I feel I run a very nimble agency, so I'm bringing in partners that are only what my clients need and nothing that they don't. Excuse me. So, for example, I work very closely with a creative director and very closely with a web developer. Excuse me, I'm so sorry, and Google SEO person. Can I pause real quick and take a drink? I'm so sorry. So it's really bespoke based on client need. I have a stable of partners that I pull in based on what each client's goals and objectives are, and really where we identify in the audit the problems and gaps are. So I work really closely with a creative director and a web developer and an SEO and PPC person. So if there's a need, we can do soup to nuts entire marketing strategies and execution. If there's not, it oftentimes is just one-to-one, me coming in and consulting with the CEO or founder and really giving them a platform from which to jump.
Okay, amazing, amazing. Very in depth there. And so when it comes to acquiring these clients for KCLO, which channels have been most effective for you, such as referrals, networking, or digital marketing?
Yeah, I have largely built this company. Probably 99% of my business has grown through referrals, which has been amazing. I have a strong network, and the work has fortunately spoken for itself. I do believe in, for my own business, an attract, not chase strategy. So I am active on LinkedIn, which has been really fruitful for warming up leads, setting up meetings, extending my network out, which has been another way that I've really leaned into, especially recently, in terms of attracting new clients.
Amazing. I talk to entrepreneurs every single day, and they're using referrals as well. And what they can find is that referrals can be unpredictable sometimes. And so I want to ask you, Casey, like what happens when that pipeline of referrals slows down for you?
That's a great question. And right now, I'm feeling like in the industry, it slowed in Q4 and Q1, and now it's shaking loose again. And when that happens for me, I lean largely into authority building and networking and just really making sure that in terms of my sales cycle, that I am continuing to maintain a certain level of visibility. So when clients are ready to hire me, I'm top of mind. You can't stop, obviously. You have to kind of keep pushing. So I end up doing a lot of the tactics I recommend for my clients for myself.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like you have certain tactics and resources that you're using in order to prevent that from completely slowing you down. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's always just having an eyesight on your pipeline. Obviously, like I have contracts and I know when I'm rolling off. So making sure that I'm backfilling continually for that has been really helpful.
Yeah, amazing. Let's jump into the sales side of things. So, what does your client engagement process look like? Say, I'm coming in, I want
Mhm.
to work with you. Tell our listeners what that looks like from initial consultation to delivering a successful marketing or PR campaign.
Absolutely. So typically, people come to me when they realize that there's friction or they have a problem. Or the other thing is when they're ready to level up. They feel like they've gotten as far as they can and they know that they need that extra boost. So they'll come to me asking for what they think they need. And then what we do is we sit down and we have about an hour-long call that I'm really diving into what they think the problem is, and then we conduct a marketing audit so we can actually tell them exactly what it is. And sometimes it aligns, most of the time it doesn't completely. So from that audit, we then create a plan moving forward based on kind of the packaging where they're at. Like I said, it may just be the audit, it may be a strategic intensive, or it may be that full-blown CMO provision. So from the audit, we create the plan and then we execute on the plan. And really, every step of the way, we're checking in to make sure that our tactics are aligned with your business's goals and objectives. We have very clear goal setting, so we understand how to move the needle and when the needle's moving. And if it's not moving, we understand when we can pivot and figure out what's wrong or what's next.
Okay, amazing. It sounds like you have great systems in place in order to go through that process. So, I know you mentioned we, so can you explain to our listeners Is there a team backed behind you? Are you the one that's taking these sales calls? What does that look like?
Yes. So I am the one taking the sales calls, and it is large. It is a lot of times me. So my unique selling point for my business is I only work with executive level partners. So if you hire me, for example, you're getting me, you're not getting an intern or an assistant account executive working on your account. It is me. Where I say we is when I bring in my strategic partners, my creative director for graphics or my web developer for SEO, for example. They are also 20 plus years of experience. So when I say we, it's more of the engaged nuts and bolts team.
That
But
makes
for
sense.
marketing strategy and PR, it is all me.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you for clarifying.
Absolutely.
And I want to touch on that really quick. So you said that right now you're the main closer, you're doing all of this. How do you feel like that has been affecting your ability to focus on founder level work or even really being able to scale? We find that a lot of times when owners of the company are doing all of it, it can be hard to scale, especially with the vision of the company. And so I'd love for you to share a little bit as to what your experience has been.
Yeah, my scale has been interesting because it's been very intentional in terms of from where I started to where I am now. I would say I am just now getting to a place where I'm actively looking to aggressively scale, whereas before I was managing my scale based on my own bandwidth. So it was a very tempered growth and intentional growth for probably the first 8 years. And now I am stepping into a little bit more phase where my bandwidth has increased and my support has increased with my strategic level executive partners that I'm able to drive more. I feel like I have more minutes in the day. And so I'm just actively leaning into saying yes more. There was a lot of times when I had to say no because I didn't have the bandwidth. And now that's not the case. I'm able to say yes. And that pipeline has largely taken care of itself through referrals. So I've been lucky not to have it be such a time suck that I know it can be for other people.
That makes sense. I talked to somebody yesterday and he said slow and steady wins the race.
Always,
So
always.
that,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just you have to be very intentional because you don't want the work to suffer. And I give that recommendation to my clients as well. What is your intention behind the scale? It can't just be revenue. It can't just be lead gen. It has to make sense and it has to be with intention.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to ask you, and for our listeners, could you tell them if you could solve one thing today that would unlock this growth, what would it be
Unlock the growth for me or for them?
for you, for you and your company?
Oh my gosh. One thing that I'm really leaning into is automation and utilizing AI to automate some of my more administrative tasks so it becomes less of a focus for me. And so that for me is really, again, continuing to take things off my plate so I can focus on strategy and leadership and execution for my clients. But yeah, that's just automating everything I can.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And in terms of growing and scaling the business, what are some of the top priorities for growing KCLO communications, say over the next 6 to 12 months? Whether that's, you said automation, whether that's bringing in more team members to help you scale the business. Tell us what that looks like.
Yeah, for me, it's leaning really heavily into my partnerships and maybe offering a more concrete package for that. So there's a better understanding that it can be just me and that's fine, but I also have a stable of people to support. And so it's really looking at my packaging and making sure it's clear and making sure that it aligns with my potential clients. And then always we are trying to grow revenue. We're actively trying to get new clients. And because I have this team behind me now that we really feel like we can execute concept to completion on basically anything any client would need at an executive level.
Amazing. And on that note, are there any specific revenue or client growth targets that you are aiming for? And what do you see as the key drivers for achieving those goals?
Yeah, I would say we are hopeful, or I'm hopeful to be generating about $30,000 of revenue every month. So hitting in the next 12 months that $360,000 range for the company, that would be the next financial milestone. I think that makes sense and is reasonable. And then continuing to grow from there. And the ways that we're going to do that is we're relaunching this kind of marketing idea where there's multiple of us. And then again, it's just that awareness generation behind this fractional CMO thing, which is new to people. There's been fractional work for a long time, but in terms of the CMO specifically, it's still relatively new. So I feel like I'm doing a lot of education on why that's a benefit and a lot of education on you actually have a problem. So many CEOs don't realize it until there is pain points, and just giving folks a way to address their marketing issues initially, and then hopefully realizing that when they need support that we're a good option.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure our listeners are going to take a lot from that. And so I want to just go into a lightning round for
Yeah.
our listeners. And so, Casey, what is one tool or resource that's been a game changer for KCLO communications?
Honestly, LinkedIn. I made a commitment to myself about 90 days ago to start posting content consistently. And it's something I'd done sporadically with not a lot of intention. And when I started doing it with intentionality, I will say I had 20 meetings booked this month. I've sent out 4 or 5 proposals as a result. So that authority building on LinkedIn is a really great way, cost-effective way for founders and CEOs to develop authority and make connections and warm up those leads without feeling like you're selling and without feeling like you're spending any money. So
Yeah.
LinkedIn. It's
Yeah,
so simple. If you do it, it works.
absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more there. And Casey, what is the best advice that you've received about scaling a marketing or PR agency?
Trust yourself. When you're a founder, I think it's really easy to have some imposter syndrome, or you have that voice in the back of your mind. Is this right? Is this right? Am I on the right path? And the answer is, yeah, you are. Trust yourself, keep going and push through.
Yeah. Yeah, that is the biggest thing because if you can't trust yourself,
Yeah.
you can't
Bet
trust
on
anything or
yourself.
anybody.
I had a conversation with my dad really early on, and he just said, Casey, I would never bet against you. And that's the kind of mindset that I've taken into my business is I'm not ever going to bet against myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And one more question for our listeners, Casey, what advice would you give to founders that are just starting their journey in the marketing or entrepreneurial space?
That it takes time, that you're closer than you think you are, and there's no silver bullet. And that's something I know we tell our clients all the time, but there's no silver bullet. It really is just best practices over and over again in perpetuity forever, moving the needle, doing good work, having integrity, and being really clear in who you are and how you're different, and then communicating that is the key. It's not
Amazing.
sexy, but it's true.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is so true. Thank you so much for sharing that to me and to our listeners. We've appreciated it so much. And that
My
does wrap
pleasure.
up. Yes, of course. That wraps up another inspiring episode of Founders Future. I want to thank Casey for sharing her incredible journey and insights with us today, Casey. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to Founders Future wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. You can also find more resources and insights at closers.io, where we're dedicated to helping businesses accelerate their sales and marketing efforts through world-class systems and playbooks. Until then, keep climbing, and we will see you on the next one.